Hi, I'm Brandon Finnigan, Director of Elections here at DDHQ. Welcome back. Only one state is holding primaries this week outright, and there are just a handful races there, but we have some interesting runoff elections to talk about today. Before we dive in, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and if you enjoyed these videos, be sure to click that little bell so you'll be notified as soon as we've released some new ones and give them a like. Let's go ahead and get on into the elections. Now, the biggest runoff race of the night, in my opinion, is happening in Alabama. 8 p.m. Eastern Time, closing local at 7 o'clock. You're all going to want to sit down and watch this one. This, of course, is the runoff election for U.S. Senate in Alabama on the Republican side between Katie Britt and current Congressman Mo Brooks. So to reset kind of where things are, Katie Britt finished first in the initial round with about 45% of the vote. She was the chief of staff for retiring U.S. Senator Richard Shelby, and she was endorsed by former President Donald Trump after the first round. Then you got Congressman Mo Brooks, represents a northern Alabama district centered around Huntsville. He finished second with about 29% in the initial round and had been endorsed by former President Donald Trump before Trump rescinded it when he kind of started sliding a bit in the polls and before his most recent endorsement of Britt. Now, the counties to watch in this race are similar to the counties to watch the first go-round. Madison is going to be critical for Mo Brooks, okay? This is the home to Huntsville. This is in the middle of his congressional district. He carried it by about 3% in the first round. He needs a really strong performance up north, and this is going to be a key county for him. If he cannot win this county outright, it's pretty much over. If he's doing well here, holding his own there, maybe he's got a fighting chance to kind of keep things interesting down in the more conservative southeastern portion of the state. Then there's Montgomery. Now that's home to Britt, and that kind of puts a little wrinkle in the hole just around the score in the more conservative southeast. You know, Britt carried it 50-26 in the first round. That's a 4,000 vote margin out of about 16,000 that had been cast back then. And then I would say Jefferson County and Shelby. So Jefferson is, of course, home to Birmingham, Alabama, and Britt carried it by about 18 points in the first round. Shelby was interesting. It's a suburb right outside of Birmingham, and it was pretty even, 36-36 in the first round. He makes about 6% of the total statewide vote. I, of course, would watch that southeast corner as well of the state. Counties like Coffee and Pike and, of course, Houston. These counties tend to report quickly. They are more conservative than other chunks of the state, but it gives you kind of an element of who's winning that kind of vote. If Brooks is running up the score here and doing better than he did in the first round, you know, maybe he has a fighting chance. But if Britt's locked him out down here, it's going to be very hard for him to make it up elsewhere in the state. So the other runoff we're kind of watching right now in Alabama is going to be the race between Dale Strong and Casey Wardynski in the 5th District. Now, that is Mo Brooks' current district. And it's strongly Republican, so the winner of this runoff almost certainly wins the general election in November. Strong led in the first round with about 45% of the vote, and Wardynski got about 23%, so nearly double the vote count for Strong over Wardynski in the first round. Most important county, of course, is Madison. It makes up about half the vote in the district for the Republicans in a primary. Strong won at 49-20, and given their performances in the first round, I think Strong is the strong favorite going into the runoff. Couldn't resist the pun. Another state holding runoffs on Tuesday is Georgia. Now, most people were expecting the governor's race or the Secretary of State, you know, on the Republican side. One of these two or both of them were going to go to runoffs. But incumbents Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger for governor and for Secretary of State, they managed to avoid that in the first round. One race that did make it to a runoff in Georgia that's worth watching is the Republican congressional primary in the 10th District. Now, in the first round, Vernon Jones got about 28% of the vote, and Mike Collins got about 17% of the vote. What makes this race interesting, even though it's a pretty solidly Republican district southeast of Atlanta, it's who's backing each candidate, right? Former President Trump backed Jones prior to the first round, and then Collins was just recently endorsed by Governor Kemp. Now, given how hard that former President Trump had gone after Kemp in that election for his gubernatorial election, you kind of see this as a proxy fight between the two. So we're going to have to see how things shake out between Jones and Collins. You know, it's going to be watching. The counties that are most important to watch are going to be Barrow, about 40% of the votes were cast here, Walton, 11%, and Jackson. So between the three of them, that's 60% of the vote. Now, Kemp carried all of those counties, every single one of the counties in this district, in his initial round and winning round for the primary race for governor. So, kind of see how things shake out. On the Democratic side of things, I would say let's look at the Secretary of State's race. It's something worth kind of following along. And that's a battle between current state rep B. Nguyen and former state rep D. Dawkins Hagler. Now, both have been kind of commenting when they interviewed that they pretty much agree on everything. They just have different experience backgrounds. Stacey Abrams, the Democratic nominee for governor, has endorsed Nguyen in this race. And the usual counties that you're going to want to check out for a Democratic runoff, we know what they are. It's Metro Atlanta. So you're going to want to watch the results out of Fulton, Clayton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, and Cobb. All right, they're going to pretty much pick the winner. They're going to take longer to report. They always do. Your more rural parts outside of Metro Atlanta tend to be quick to the draw in terms of getting their votes dumped in there. You'll be waiting a little bit to see kind of what's going to happen as you zero in on Atlanta. There's runoff elections for some other statewide offices in Arkansas. Nothing particularly big in terms of federal races in that state. All those federal primaries were decided earlier this year. So let's kind of wrap things up with the state of Virginia. All right. Now, neither of the state's 2 U.S. senators are up for election this year. The statewide elections were held last year. So Virginia doesn't run uncontested primaries, by the way. If there's only a single candidate, they don't bother to put it up on the ballot. There are just 5 House primaries this year. 5. 4 on the Republican side, 1 on the Democratic side. And of those races, there's 2 to keep an eye on because of what they're setting up for in November. Virginia's 2nd district, currently held by Democratic Rep. Elaine Luria. State Senator Jen Kiggins is expected to win the primary there. And then in Virginia's 7th district, the Republican primary is a lot more open, and the winner is going to be taking on incumbent Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. Now, both Luria and Spanberger won their seats in the Democratic wave year of 2018. They survived the surprisingly strong Republican-ish counter wave, if you will, that happened in the House in 2020, where Republicans gained seats in that election. They are both considered really at risk in the current pro-GOP environment. Oh, and there is the Virginia's 8th district, Don Beyer. He's the only incumbent in the entire delegation that's going to face a primary challenger, but he's expected to beat that challenger and win renomination. Now that's going to do it for us for our preview of the races on June 21st, primarily runoffs. We'll be back with a larger slate of races next week in Colorado, Illinois, New York, Oklahoma, Utah, runoffs in South Carolina, runoffs in Mississippi. It's going to be a pretty packed week. Until then, be sure to like, subscribe, and sign up for new video notifications. I'm Brandon Finnigan. Thank you very much for watching.